Hello everyone. My name is Caroline Jensen, professional photographer and flower farmer. Today we're going to talk about making passive income selling our work. No income is really passive when it comes to the labor that's involved in setting up and getting things going, but a lot of people have asked me over the years how they can sell their floral artwork. The thing that I come across most often is that people belittle it or think that it's not going to sell because it's something that's fairly common. And it was a reason that I stayed away from photographing flowers for so long, because it's kind of cliche in a way. Everybody photographs flowers, and why? And that is what I wanted to drill down a little bit. The reason that people photograph flowers is because they genuinely are attracted to them. People have an inherent thing, I believe, in their cell structure that makes them attracted to beautiful nature. We are not created to ignore beauty that's in front of us. And yes, a lot of us have our noses stuck in our phones, myself included a lot of times, but there's just something about sitting in nature that really does reset everything within us. And I believe it's very much driven by deep within our makeup, that nature is something that we like. So therefore, people adorning their walls with beautiful floral art is not something to consider as being completely irrelevant. Now, the problem that we run into is just the amount of things that are out there in the world. And when we look at places where people are selling things, and particularly when I was working with stock a lot, I remember stock agencies saying, we don't want any flowers, we have plenty of flowers. And so it is true, flowers are something that is pretty common. The thing is even if something is saturated, like the flower niche, which is probably half of all photography. You have people photography and probably nature photography, and then there's, the outliers and things that are subsections of those too. But I that's part of the reason I dismissed it. But the thing is you have to have an emotional hook. You have to have something about your work that makes people want to put it on their wall, and that means kind of niching down, for lack of a better term, to find those people who want to put your work on their wall. When I shoot photography, I shoot for myself. I shoot with settings and lighting and all of the things that make me attracted to my own work. And for myself, that has usually driven me toward darker backgrounds and more dramatic lighting. Reason being is I have this theory. When you have really light and airy backgrounds, you're kind of attracted to the whole image. It's a light and happy image. It brings joy, but it's not so much about the individual element as it is the thing as a whole. When I look at my images and the things that I try to create, I'm specifically trying to hone in and drill down to the very specific part of a flower. The center, the petal, the way something's falling, the communication of the flower, if it were kind of anthropomorphized as a portrait, the personality of the flower in that sense. And doing so is easier if I can just take all of the extraneous details away, which usually for me means about a black background. Now, I also like light backgrounds, but again, it serves a different function. It's more for sharing joy and something that's colorful and not necessarily as dramatic, because when you try to apply really dramatic shadows to a light background, they kind of get lost. You can do it, but it's really the lack of light in the areas that aren't being highlighted that make that dramatic, moody look. And that is not as easy to do with a light background. And therefore, they're just kind of two separate lanes. But you need to drill down and you need to think about who is the person that is going to buy your work. Are you looking for somebody who wants to put your floral images in their baby nursery? Or maybe somebody wants to put it in their bedroom? Or maybe somebody wants to put it in their bathroom? Or maybe they want to do their daughter's room? The thing about flowers is there really aren't any people that aren't attracted to them. You just have to figure out what type of flower is going to attract them. Now, I kind of had some stereotypical things in there, but my husband actually really likes floral portraits, and he wants to put some of my flowers in his office at his bank. So it's not necessarily a feminine versus masculine type spectrum here that I'm talking about. I think flowers are universally interesting. Now, would he prefer to put something that's more related to what he does in life, like farming machinery or cars? Probably. But there's something very calming and soothing about having flowers on your wall. So think of places of business, restaurants, hospitals, clinics, office buildings, lawyers' offices. There's something that's disarming about flowers. They really help to relax the people that are looking at them. And so possibly they'd be good in high stress areas and as a way to sort of temper a very high strung environment. So the first thing that you need to do is figure out how you can take what you create and what you can create and cater it to the customer that's your ideal customer. The second thing that you have to think about when it comes to selling your work is how you want to present it. It's easy to sell digital files, but it's hard to get those digital files to actually look really good. And that's where a lot of people kind of their intentions collide with their vision. They want to sell work easily. They want people to be able to download their work because it takes a lot of stress off of the seller. But at the end, you can have people who, and I get this all the time, try to print my work on something like office paper with a office printer that has magenta, cyan, and black, or it doesn't make beautiful prints. And they're like, well, my printed print doesn't look like the file I bought. I want a refund. And I'm thinking, okay, I've learned over the years that if I want to sell my floral work, I either have to give it to them in a physical product where I'm in control of all of those parameters so that they're getting a high quality product, or I have to extensively educate the customer on how they need to work with their printing process. You cannot take a digital file to Walgreens necessarily. Maybe they've improved over the years, I don't know, but there's a certain level of automation that goes into printing things in lower priced categories. And that can run into trouble. The thing is people are a bit on the sticker shock side when the majority of people, and maybe I'm being overly simplistic, but I think a lot of people think they can just go on Google Images and download something and print it. Unless you're a professional photographer and really understand the nuances of copyright, I've had a lot of people who've downloaded my work from Instagram and say, oh, I printed this, I love it. So there's a lot of lack of education for people about copyright and things like that. And because of something as simple as being able to Google a flower picture and download it, people tend to not want to pay a lot. So there are a couple strategies that you can enlist. You can do things like having a limited edition run. And I've been considering another aspect, and that is not having my pictures online, where the things that I sell are simply in the real world. They're physical items, meaning I might take a picture, have it printed and have it framed, and then list that to sell. Like, this is a one-off. This image is not available anywhere else. This is not available online. And then you make sure that you have it protected, online, the picture of the framed art, where yes, someone could come in and try to extract it and upscale it and do all the things, but much like an NFT, if we're thinking along those lines, there's one original, and this is it. Like, this is it. And I think that is something that may help. It kind of follows along the line of regular art, painted art, where you might have something like an N.C. Wyeth painting that you can stick on a pillow because it's part of the public domain. I think it is. I don't know. Some of the Wyeths are still not public domain, so don't quote me on that. But anyway, let's say Vermeer, right? We'll go with the one that was pretty safe. You could put Vermeer painting on a pillow and sell it at with print on demand. But the original Vermeer, that is where the real value is. So I'm starting to think and move into the area of sharing my work that's for sale in this very limited scope. This is the piece that's for sale, and this is how much it costs. The drawback to that compared to selling digitals or many of the other like print-on-demand options where the company drop ships it to the person directly is the amount of labor that goes in on my end. Meaning I have to print it, I have to frame it, I have to mail it, and all of that falls on my shoulders. The amount of money you can fetch for it, however, is significantly higher. And so that is where the business aspect comes in. How much am I willing to do that's not passive? And is my work worth that? I was going to say, is my worth that? But it kind of goes along the same way. Am I worthy of this? Now, ideally, it would be nice to pass the buck on to somebody else and say, here, an order has come in, you print and frame this and ship it out for me. And, ideally, that would be awesome if you could fetch a pretty penny for each picture. But again, the demand is not there yet for me to do this thing, so I have to figure it out. If you're going to sell your work, though, through print-on-demand or print-on-demand marketplaces, I'm talking about places like Redbubble or Society6 or TeePublic, or all of these places where it's potential to sell digital work, or Spring, which used to be Teespring. You have to ask yourself, is it going to be stolen? Places like Redbubble, which are going through major upheavals at the moment, they've installed a fee structure, which is making a lot of people who are selling on their platform upset. But part of the Redbubble problem that existed before their new fee structure was the fact that many people could extract original files from their site with no problem. And I'm not really sure how they do it. I've just heard it can be done. And that pilfering people's pictures off of Redbubble was a real problem. People take your picture and upload it as their own, and just lots of trouble. So creating scarcity in some way will help your work, but that may not be your ideal customer. There's two different options you can think of. The first that I've described here, with making exclusive work that's not available online and is only sold as a physical print, that is one avenue. And then having a bulk volume, selling hundreds, if not thousands of things per week could possibly be another. And it really, in the end, kind of comes down to how much money are you investing in each picture? Is it a lot or is it a little? Now, let's talk a little bit about the investment in each picture, because most people do not consider all of this or think about it in depth enough. Every time that I make a digital picture, it isn't just a digital picture. I have an iMac. I have backup externals. I have Backblaze. I have Dropbox to the tune of a 4 terabyte Dropbox, which I pay for every month. Anything I sell digital has to be stored somewhere. That costs me every month. I use Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom. So that is another fee that is in the mix. I use upscaling software. I use special sharpening software. I use lots of different things like cleaning my Mac software. All of these things are yearly things that add up and go into the cost. And that's not even covering things like lenses, cameras, camera maintenance, camera cards, card readers. I mean, the card reader for the card that I currently use cost $118 recently, just to read the card and put it into my computer. All of these fees are real. And I know that over the years, when I've been involved in photography a long time, people have tried to educate customers on how much money goes into each of these pictures. One of my pictures doesn't have all of the things above that I've just mentioned. It also has lighting, which is another massive expenditure, backgrounds, props, all of these, and not to mention that every flower I photograph, I grow myself. So there's water and weeding and maintenance and seed costs and bulb costs and tuber costs and root costs and greenhouse costs and keeping my greenhouse warm in the winter. Like, there are so many expenses that go into the mix. Factoring in all those costs to make it worth what you're doing, to make sure that you're not in the red at the end of the day, It really matters. And you want to quantify all of the importance of these individual things before you set out to sell your work. It's easy to, and I think it's easy to say, oh, this doesn't cost me very much. I just go out and snap a picture. Yes, but how much went into that? How much education and knowledge went into that? So to recap, what you need to do in order to sell your work is figure out the lane that's most profitable for you that makes sense. Spend a lot of time figuring out who your ideal customer is, who is going to buy your work, and what is the best way to deliver that work to them. A lot of it is overcoming imposter syndrome, figuring out if you can get past the idea that your work isn't good enough or that it's too similar to other people's or whatever, to put the value that is necessary on your work to make it profitable for yourself and not just a side hustle or a hobby. And understanding all of those nuances of cost that go into all of it. Mapping all of this out. Is there a right answer? No, not really. Everybody's going to be different. But I want to assure people that the idea of selling flowers in the form of a print or on a product even is not this overly saturated thing. Just like people photography is never going to be oversaturated, there's always going to be a need for people photography. I think flower photography strikes a nerve with most of humanity. Think of all the places that people use flowers. Weddings, funerals, just I love you gifts. I'm thinking of you gifts, hospital flowers. Flowers are part of the innate fabric of humanity. And there is one thing I haven't mentioned, and that's all the people who are passionate about individual flowers. I don't know about you, but I'm very passionate about double daylilies. Not many people are, I didn't think, until I stumbled across the Hemerocallis Society here in Minnesota. And I realized there are super passionate people who love daylilies. And that goes for every kind of flower, roses, peonies. There are people who are passionate about specific kinds, and if you're passionate about a particular thing, there's a chance someone else is as well. The last thing I want to mention is your website. If you're selling in marketplaces, that is out of the question. You're basically selling on someone else's website. And if you're selling custom work or print on demand, you're going to need your own place to do that. I want to tell a tale of caution. I've had lots of different websites over the years, and some have been great and some have been absolutely awful. Before you decide to market your work and you've gone through all the previous steps, spend a little bit of time thinking about what are the features that you need in your own website. Do you want to own it completely and have complete customization? Are you okay with doing a little bit of code here or there? Do you want to have your website be completely scalable? So if you start out small and end up really big, will you be able to handle that, or will you have to move to a completely different platform? These are questions to think about, which I wish I had spent more time in the beginning. I've spent an insane amount of money redoing my website several times over the years, and it's because I'm a bit undecided and give it a go with an idea and it fails, and then I have to try something else. Or B, I just don't want to spend the money on something substantial because I worry that I won't meet the potential of the robustness of the site. But I'm learning. Yeah. And how you're going to prevent people from just taking your stuff by right-clicking. You want to make sure that you prevent that. But those are a lot of factors that go into flower photography and some thoughts I have. In other talks, I'd like to go into the world of AI and how that's kind of colliding with the world of flower photography and how we can compete against that. But that is a conversation for another day. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.